Hi everyone, my name is Danielle. Welcome to the channel. If you haven't already done so, hit the subscribe button and let's get started. Instinct was a book purchase that I made almost 10 years ago. And I only read 2 chapters. And last year, Bishop T.D. Jakes came out with a book, Disrupting something. I can't remember. I know it started with a D. I'll put it somewhere so you could see the cover. But he was doing promo for the book and it was getting a lot of positive press. And so I was like, oh, I should check out that book. And then I was like, hold up. You have a book by the bishop that you have not read yet. Let's stop before you go buying more books. Let's stop and read this book. And I'm glad I did that. I'm glad that I stopped and read Instinct. And I'll give you the timeline because the timeline matters. 21 chapters. So I started this probably like end of May. I wasn't consistent, even though I was reading like a chapter a day, that was my goal. But I wasn't consistent. So by Father's Day, I still wasn't done with the book. What happened was Father's Day 2023, he came out and did a sermon.
Another woman tells me how to be a father, I will open my mouth and flat out scream. You can no more tell me how to be a father than I can tell you how to birth a baby. I don't know nothing about birthing a baby. I don't know nothing about nursing a child. You have to know what you don't know. Shut up being the teacher and just be the wife. How do you know how to be a father? Not only are you not a father, most of you didn't even have a father, and yet you're an expert on how to be.
And I put the book back down. And I put the book down because I was just so irritated by the soundbite. There is an intense gender war going on. If you go online to any of these platforms and see the way men and women going back and forth with each other about each other's roles, what each other is supposed to do for one another, it's really harmful. As one of the most influential pastors in the Black church, outside of the Black church, in the world, I think you have to be way more careful about the way you speak about women from the pulpit. I'm getting annoyed all over again. So in Instinct, and just in general, I've heard him say this as well, but specifically he brought it up in Instinct many times, the idea of maintaining a neutral stance and not going so far left or right on any specific issue, but trying to maintain neutrality and seeing both sides. This neutrality was instrumental in him being able to have a working relationship with the past 4 sitting presidents. At the time of this book, the most recent president was Obama. Okay, so let's be clear. He's basically saying this as a flex to say, like, I have maintained a neutral stance in certain issues, and that's opened certain doors for me. And it's the way I speak to people, the way I treat people, the way I watch my words, the way I choose to engage in certain situations. Those are the things that have been really instrumental in my own success. And my thing is, if you can be so careful about the way you speak to Republicans, to Democrats, to billionaires, why can't you do that with women? You have a book called Woman, Thou Art Loose. I never saw a think piece saying shut up and be a man. And what's so ironic is that if we are to look at the Potter's House Church and who's most likely of your children to take over the church, it would be a woman. I'm just saying. But let me be clear. I like Sarah. I like Bishop T.D. Jakes. But I felt a way about that statement, and it made it harder for me to continue reading the book because I'm like, you can have such neutrality and diplomacy when it comes to speaking to Republican presidents. You know how to navigate these different waters, but for some reason, when it comes to women, it was okay to make that kind of statement in that kind of climate. There's so much division amongst men and women to the point where you're seeing movements such as passport bros, decentering men. When you can put names to the divisions, the way that we're so divided, you need to be more careful with your words. And it's easy to say, oh, he wrote that book 10 years ago. No, he also says this. He still preaches that type of neutrality to this day. Speaking of the women who went to Jesus' tomb, the sermon was entitled, God Has Moved On. So while people were still rolling over in the bed, they rise up early in the morning and start gathering frankincense and myrrh.
They're still taking care of Jesus. I mean, they think he's dead, and they're still taking care of Jesus. What kind of love is that? But these women so love Jesus. It's not just that they supported and that they gave and that they funded his vision, but even when the teacher was dead, the student still came to class. Do you hear what I'm saying? That is a devotion that much of this generation does not understand.
I do believe he has a respect for women. I think this quote is proof that he does credit women for being phenomenal. I think that there was layers as to why I felt a way about continuing to read the book. After I cooled off, I picked the book back up and kept going. There were things in the book that I appreciated. To be honest, I actually recorded last year in terms of things that I liked about the book because that matters to the conversation. It really does. So I'll go ahead and do that now. He talks about decoding your design. He said basically you're becoming a student of yourself. Go and see what you have bookmarked as favorites on your computer. Look at the images you've collected on Pinterest. What do they all have in common? Use your instincts to guide you to what you love, but may not have allowed yourself to admit. Search through the archaeology of your own ambition. Look for patterns, similarities, and common denominators. Group them according to how they move you, speak to you, motivate you, and stimulate you. What sparks your creative impulse? Who motivates you as a role model? Where do you feel most alive? I love this line. You are the most fascinating person you will ever know. So don't cover up, deny, suppress, or pretend otherwise. He gives a lot of tips for an excavation process, which I really liked. I liked that. And I was like, I want more of this. This chapter was called Instinct or Extinct. If I could have more of that, the book would be fire. But there are a couple lines that do stand out to me. I'm like, ooh, that's a great line. But sometimes we've deadened the nerve endings of our instincts by indulging in the luxury of deciding by the numbers and living in the books instead of creating in the crosshairs of crisis. We basically think that what we know is more important than the instincts of what our gut is telling us to do. And that can be a dangerous place to be if you're not careful about learning how to create in the crosshairs of crisis. I thought that was a great line. I won't give it a full grade because I'm only halfway through. I will circle back with my full review or final review once I finish the book. So by the time I finished the book, child, we were well into the summer. I remember having the book poolside. I've read this book. I can check it off my list and I can move on. That was the summertime. I can't remember if it was November or December when Cassie Ventura made her, when she filed her lawsuit against Diddy. But when she did that, one of my first thoughts was, ooh, Bishop T.D. Jakes will need to distance himself from Diddy. This was before his name even came up in the conversation. This is before all of the swallowed up jokes were going around. As most people know by now, his name has been very much included in the conversation as it relates to Diddy and all of these lawsuits. And then this week, the feds, Homeland Security, raided his homes on both coasts at the same time. With all of that going on, Bishop T.D. Jakes' name continues to be included in the conversation. I knew that they had a relationship with each other, like a relationship in that, like, you're at least friends. You're cool with each other. I knew that because he mentions him in the book. And then also over the years, you've seen them, different settings, you've seen them together. I think there's a reckoning I'm having as it pertains to men in power, how they got to power, how much of their advice should we actually take? Because while it's nice to talk about the grit and the grind and the hustle, no one is going to talk about the corruption. They're not going to say, yeah, I was crazy corrupt. I was abusive. I was manipulative. They're not going to say that. And I'm not saying that T.D. Jakes is that. We have to be really mindful that even in books, we're not getting the full context. We're not getting the full picture of what people are doing in order to really achieve their success. Because at this point, it is eerie to think that Bishop T.D. Jakes and Sean Combs have anything in common because of how depraved the allegations are against Sean Combs. I think there has to be conversations surrounding what it looks like to partner with people and our motivations for partnering with people. Because I can understand from a Christian perspective how you would say, no, I'm not going to not partner with somebody because they're not in church every week or they may be a sex symbol. I don't think there is anything wrong with having relationships with people. However, it's like, to what extent? Because whether this information that's come out about T.D. Jakes and his association with Diddy is true or not, it's fair to say this has been a deeply damaging time for him personally. I don't know if the allegations and the speculations around Bishop T.D. Jakes and his potentially intimate relationship with Diddy is true or not. I don't know. I genuinely don't know. If you're a Christian, I'm not saying only be friends with Christians. I don't think I disagree with that standpoint. But in the same way that businesses have moral clauses and will cut ties with people who go against those moral clauses, what is a way to conduct ourselves personally and how we engage with people? Watching the potential downfall of Diddy and how T.D. Jakes is so wrapped in it. At the time of this recording, we have not seen any footage or proof that they've engaged in anything corrupt together. We don't know that at this point. I'm just hoping we don't have any proof of that at this point. But man, being even associated with him sucks. And so I wonder, what is the line? Where is the line? And I think each person has to decide it for themselves. Because also, I don't even want to front like I know what it's like to be Bishop T.D. Jakes. He has a vantage point that I will never have because he's him and he has exposure to so many different rooms and has a different understanding of the world that he operates in a way that I have no clue. So I'm not going to sit here and be like, Bishop T.D. Jakes, you shouldn't have done this or you shouldn't. Like, I really don't know. I don't know what your motives were, but I will say, like, it really does inspire me to be more intentional about watching the company I keep and being mindful of my motives when partnering with people, with engaging with people, with having friendships with people, the conversations that I have with people, because in many cases, you really don't know. In some cases, you know, but in a lot of cases, you may not really know a person's motive, and that's where discernment comes in. I think that's where reliance on God, your instincts, your discernment, and prayer can be very, very, very important and crucial and instrumental in your ability to navigate relationships with people. Those are my thoughts for now. I don't think I want to pick this back up again, but I wanted to talk about this book and how I felt about it. I want to talk about the complexities of the complex emotions I felt as it pertained to this book, and the experience of reading it as I'm watching things unfold in real time in regards to his opinions regarding women in certain aspects of life, and then everything that's gone on with Diddy and the lawsuits, multiple lawsuits and all of that. I like Bishop T.D. Jakes. I think, like a lot of people who have followed his ministry for years, there's a level of concern and sadness that you see as it pertains to what's happening and how things are unfolding, and hoping for the best. Whoever is responsible for dealing with illegal activities in just some of the most depraved ways. I hope that everyone is brought to justice. I do. I pray for the victims. I do think of the families as well. I do. Alright guys, thank you so much for watching this episode. I really appreciate it. Please be sure to hit the subscribe button and the like button. Comment below, let me know if you've read any of Bishop T.D. Jakes' books and if you plan to read Instinct or any of his other books in the future. I will also suggest, if you do plan to read any of his other books, I could imagine it being very good as an audiobook. There's nothing wrong with reading his words, but I'm so used to hearing his sermons, so I can imagine him on an audiobook would be dynamic. So I will say that. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys, and I will see you next week. Bye.